The stars burned cold in the void, distant and indifferent, as Ambassador Elias Varek stood before the floor-to-ceiling viewport of the Celestial Accord, the grandest diplomatic vessel ever constructed by the Galactic Federation. His reflection hovered ghost-like against the black, a lean silhouette framed by the distant swirl of the Andromeda Nebula. The ship hummed around him, a deep, resonant vibration that seeped into his bones, a reminder of the thousands of lives aboard, all waiting for the humans to return to the negotiating table. Elias adjusted the high collar of his formal robes, the silver embroidery catching the dim light. The fabric was heavy, weighted with tradition just like the role he now played. He was not just an ambassador, he was the last one. The others, the Zorati, the Kelder, even the ever-patient Queln, had already withdrawn, their patience frayed to breaking point. Only he remained, a stubborn relic of a dying hope. The humans had left without explanation. One moment they had been there, their delegates sharp-eyed and unreadable, their words measured but laced with something the Federation had failed to recognize at the time. Then, between one session and the next, they had vanished. Their ships, their envoys, their endless, infuriating questions, gone. The Federation had assumed it was another human tactic, another layer of their incomprehensible strategies. But days had passed. Then weeks. Elias exhaled, watching his breath fog the glass before dissipating. He had studied humans for decades, learned their languages, their histories, their wars and treaties and art. He had thought he understood them. But now, staring into the abyss, he wondered if anyone truly had. Behind him, the door hissed open. Ambassador. The voice was smooth, synthetic, Lasara, his Queln aide. Her kind had abandoned vocal cords millennia ago, communicating instead through modulated harmonics. The council requests your presence. They have reached a decision. Elias didn't turn. They're calling it off, aren't they? Pause. The Queln did not lie. Yes. He closed his eyes. The Federation had spent centuries building this alliance, weaving together a tapestry of species, cultures, technologies. And now, because of one stubborn, absent race, it was unraveling. Tell them I'll be there shortly. Lasara lingered. You blame yourself. Elias smiled faintly. I was the one who insisted we invite them. They were always unpredictable. That's why we needed them. The humans had been the wild card, the unknown variable in the Federation's grand equations. Brilliant, yes. Dangerous, certainly. But necessary. The Kelder had brute strength, the Zorati had precision, the Queln had wisdom, but the humans? They had something else. Something no one could define. Elias turned from the viewport. The chamber outside was a cavern of polished obsidian, lit by floating bioluminescent orbs that cast shifting patterns across the walls. Delegates from a dozen species murmured in hushed tones, their voices blending into a dissonant chorus. At the center of the room, the high seat loomed empty, a symbol of the Federation's unity now fractured. As he stepped forward, the murmurs died. All eyes turned to him. Ambassador Varek, rumbled Counselor Draxus, a Kelder whose massive frame seemed to absorb the light around him. We have waited long enough. The humans have made their choice. We proceed without them. Elias met the Kelder's gaze. And if they return? Draxus snorted. Let them beg for entry. A murmur of agreement rippled through the chamber. Elias felt the weight of it pressing down on him. This was it. The moment the Federation sealed its fate. The ship shuddered. Alarms blared, sharp and urgent. The orbs flickered, their lights stuttering like dying stars. Elias staggered, catching himself against the wall as the floor tilted beneath him. What? Lasara's voice cut through the chaos. Ambassador, we're receiving a transmission. From whom? Her faceless visage tilted toward him. The humans? The transmission flickered with a rawness that made Elias's skin prickle. No Federation protocols, no diplomatic filters. Just the jagged edges of human communication, unfiltered and urgent. The woman on screen had the look of soldiers from old human wars he'd studied. Eyes like flint, voice stripped of ornamentation. You weren't listening, she said. So we stopped talking. Behind her, the bridge of her ship buzzed with a tension the Celestial Accord hadn't felt in centuries. Crew moved like parts of a machine, faces lit by the glow of tactical displays. None of them looked up. None of them hesitated. Elias's fingers tightened around the edge of the holopodium. Commander Lean. Save the titles, she cut in. We're past that. A flick of her wrist and the feed split. Stars blinked out. Not just on screen, out there. The Accord's external sensors scrambled to adjust, recalibrating frantically as entire sectors of space winked into darkness. Draxus's roar shook the chamber. What is this trickery? No trick, Lean said. Just velocity. The darkness wasn't empty. It was moving. Elias's stomach dropped. The Federation's long-range scans had dismissed the anomalies as gravitational echoes. But the humans had seen deeper. They'd watched it accelerate. Lasara's harmonics spiked. Ambassador, the Accord's predictive models are wrong, Lean finished. Because you built them to recognize threats that obey your rules. She leaned forward. This one doesn't. A proximity alert shrieked. The human ships, those strange asymmetrical things, shifted formation. Not an attack posture. A barrier. Draxus seized Elias's arm, claws pricking through fabric. You brought them here. Fix this. The chamber erupted. Zorati delegates hissed through slit nostrils. Queln harmonics spiraled into dissonance. Elias barely heard them. His gaze locked on the feed where Lean's crew were arming something. Not weapons. Generators. You knew, he whispered. Lean's smile was razor-thin. We suspected. Now we know. A child's memory surfaced. Elias's first diplomatic mission, watching human engineers jury-rig a dying reactor with scraps. His mentor had sneered, they treat the universe like a problem to be hacked. The Devourer wasn't just coming. It was here. And the humans had already rewired their entire civilization to meet it. The Celestial Accord shuddered like a dying beast as the Devourer's shadow spilled across its hull. Elias watched through the viewport as entire constellations blinked out, not just stars but the space between them, swallowed by something that left no light, no debris, not even the faintest ripple of gravity in its wake. It wasn't destruction. It was erasure. Lean's voice crackled through the comms, stripped of all pretense. Varek, you have 30 seconds to decide if you want to live. Draxus snarled, his massive frame blocking the holodisplay. This is a human weapon. They created this. Elias didn't bother arguing. He'd seen the data, the way the Devourer's path traced backward through dead galaxies, long before humans had split the atom. No, this was older. Hungrier. And the humans hadn't run from it. They'd studied it the way a surgeon studies cancer. Give me the channel, Elias said. Lasara hesitated. The Council hasn't. The Council is dead. He wrenched the controls from her, his voice raw. Lean? What do you need? Static. Then. Your reactors. All of them. The chamber erupted. The Zorati shrieked about sovereignty. The Queln's harmonics spiraled into panic. Only the Kelder fell silent. Draxus's claws flexed, but his eyes, for the first time, held doubt. Elias didn't wait. He slammed his fist onto the override. Do it. Alarms howled as the Accord's core went critical, its energy forcibly rerouted. Across the fleet, 1,000 ships followed suit, their power bleeding into the human network. The generators, those jagged, jury-rigged monstrosities, flared to life. Space rippled. Not a shield. A mirror. The Devourer recoiled. For the first time in recorded history, something resisted it. The humans hadn't built a weapon. They'd built a countermeasure, something that turned the Devourer's own hunger against it. Lean's face appeared on the screen, streaked with sweat and triumph. Turns out, she gasped, it doesn't like being eaten either. The Devourer twisted, fracturing like glass under pressure. Then, silence. The stars returned. Elias collapsed against the console, his robes drenched. Draxus stared at him, then slowly, deliberately, placed a clawed fist over his chest in the Kelder salute. Lean's final transmission was barely audible. Next time, she whispered, listen faster. The screen went dark. Outside, the human ships winked out, not in retreat but in pursuit. They'd given the galaxy a chance. Now they were going to finish the hunt. Elias exhaled. Somewhere in the ruins of the old Federation, something new was stirring. And this time he knew better than to call it unpredictable. The silence that followed Lean's transmission was heavier than the void between galaxies. Elias stared at the static-filled holodisplay, his reflection fractured across its dying light. The Celestial Accord trembled around them, not from weapons fire, but from the sheer gravitational distortion as the Devourer reshaped spacetime itself. Draxus's claws dug into the command console, his breathing ragged. We should have glassed their homeworld when we first made contact. Elias didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on the tactical display where human ships, those asymmetrical jury-rigged monstrosities, were moving in patterns that made Federation targeting systems glitch. Not evasive maneuvers. Sacrificial formations. Lasara's harmonics spiked. They're not trying to fight it. They're hurting it, Elias finished. The realization hit like a plasma burst. The humans hadn't come to save the Federation. They'd come to use it. The calm crackled. Lean's voice was stripped raw. Varek, we need your quantum core. Draxus roared. They want to cripple us. Elias turned to the quivering Zorati delegation. Can we survive without it? The lead scientist's frills flushed crimson. For 6 minutes? Maybe. Outside, another star blinked out. Elias reached for the release codes. The chamber erupted. Kelder warriors drew plasma blades. Queln harmonics shifted to battle frequencies. Lasara stepped between them and Elias, her faceless visage unreadable. You would trust them with our extinction? Elias's fingers hovered over the console. No. I trust them with theirs. He entered the code. The Accord shuddered as its beating heart was ripped away. Across the fleet, 100 other cores flared and died, their energy funneled into the human network. The Devourer pulsed, once, twice, then contorted. Space itself screamed. The human ships dissolved first, their atoms unraveling into luminous strands that wove a net around the darkness. Then the Devourer folded, reality bending around it like paper tossed into a fire. For one impossible moment, Elias saw through the tear, saw infinite voids beyond voids, each swallowing the last. Then silence. The stars burned steady. Lean's final transmission played on loop through the wrecked comm system. You kept asking why we left. We went to build a door. Draxus collapsed into the high seat, his armor cracked with fatigue. They're all dead. Elias watched the last human signature fade from the scanners. No, he said softly. They're everywhere now. Outside, the newborn nebula pulsed with strange light, not the corpse of a dying star, but the birth cry of something that had never existed before. The Federation would call it a monument. The humans would have called it a first draft. The celestial accord drifted through a sea of newborn stars, each pulse of light carrying echoes of human voices. Elias pressed his palm against the observation deck's cold glass, watching constellations rearrange themselves into patterns no Federation algorithm could decode. The ship's damaged systems flickered, casting jagged shadows that danced like the human's final transmission. Draxus stood rigid at tactical, his warrior's body still tensed for a fight that had transformed beyond recognition. This changes nothing, he growled. The Devourer still exists. Lasara's harmonics shimmered in the air between them. No. It remembers now. The science console erupted with alerts. The Zorati chief researcher's frills stood erect as streams of data cascaded across her screen. The energy signatures. They're conversing. She turned trembling eyes to Elias. The humans left us a translator. Elias felt the weight of centuries of diplomacy shatter. All his carefully crafted treaties, his painstakingly negotiated accords, reduced to cosmic background noise against this new paradigm. The humans hadn't just solved the crisis. They'd rewritten the rules. A soft chime echoed through the bridge. The main display activated on its own, projecting a hologram that made the Queln scientists gasp. A perfect double helix of light and shadow, spinning gently above the command console. Where the projection touched the floor, equations bloomed like flowers, their variables shifting in real time. Draxus reached out, then snatched his claws back as the light kissed his armor. What trickery is this? Elias stepped forward, his shadow merging with the hologram. Not a trick. An invitation. The helix pulsed in response, its rhythm matching the Accord's faltering life support. For the first time in recorded history, the ship's ancient systems began repairing themselves, not through Federation engineering but through something far older. The bulkheads hummed with unfamiliar energy as the very metal remembered younger days. Lasara extended a slender limb into the light. They're not gone, she whispered. They're everywhere now. Outside, the newborn stars winked in perfect sequence. A message. A greeting. Elias exhaled centuries of diplomatic training. There would be no negotiations this time. No carefully worded treaties. The humans had spoken the universe's first true universal language, and all that remained was to listen. The celestial accord turned its wounded hull toward home, carrying not survivors but witnesses. Behind them, the stars continued their conversation, a dialogue that would outlast civilizations. And somewhere in the dark, something that had once known only hunger finally learned to sing. The Federation Council chamber had stood empty for 37 days when Elias returned. The polished obsidian walls, once alive with the murmurs of 100 species, now echoed only with absence. He walked slowly down the central aisle, his boots kicking up eddies of dust from collapsed negotiations. Draxus's armor clanked as he followed, his weapons still humming with residual energy from the transformed void. "They called us heretics," he rumbled. "Cowards." Elias stopped before the high seat, its once gleaming surface now dull with neglect. "They were afraid." Lysara's form shimmered as she phased through the sealed chamber doors. "The Queln have begun composing new harmonics," she reported. "The Zorati science clans are petitioning for." A tremor cut her off. Not in the ship. Not in the station. In the fabric of local spacetime. The three of them turned as one to the observation window. Where Earth had been, there now swirled a perfect sphere of golden light. Human cities still stood, their skylines etched in luminous filaments, but the planet itself had become something else entirely, a living equation, its continents shifting in elegant, impossible patterns. Draxus's weapons array powered down with a sigh. They ascended. Elias touched the cold glass. No. They came home. The light pulsed once, gently in greeting. Across the galaxy, the Devours' new constellations echoed the rhythm. The Federation's abandoned comm systems crackled to life, broadcasting a single repeating signal on every frequency. A child's laughter, a scientist's triumphant shout, a soldier's final breath, all woven into a symphony of light. Lysara's harmonics blended with the transmission perfectly. "They're waiting for our reply." Elias looked at Draxus. The warrior's claws flexed, then stilled. After a lifetime of war, the Kelder slowly, deliberately began to sing, a rough, untuned battle hymn that nonetheless fit the cosmic chorus like it had always belonged. Elias closed his eyes and let the light wash over him. The humans had left the negotiating table to teach the universe its first true word. And now, at last, the galaxy was ready to speak back. The end.